If you were afraid, my darling, I'd be the courage you lack. If you were a bird, then I'd be a tree, and you would come home, my darling, to me. If you were asleep, then I'd be a dream. Wherever you are, that's where my heart will be. Oh, do you know we belong together? Oh, do you know my heart is yours? If you were the ocean, I'd be the sand. If you were a song, I'd be the band. If you were the stars, then I'd be the moon. A light in the dark, my darling, for you. Oh, do you know we belong together? Oh, do you know my heart is yours?
So the kingdom of heaven is like a man who searches the world, and he's a merchant, and he finds a pearl, something he treasures greatly. In that he sells everything he has, and he buys that pearl. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who searched the world for fine treasure, and then one day while digging up in a field, he sees that treasure. Then he bears that treasure back in the field. In his great joy and in his great excitement, he goes out and he buys the whole field. Kingdom of heaven is like a man who had 2 sons. And the younger of the 2 sons comes to his father and says, "Father, give me half of all my inheritance." And the father goes and divvies up everything he has and everything he's got and gives the entire half to that son. Now that son goes to a foreign country in a faraway land, and he squanders all the money in riotous living, spending it in any place he could. And then all of a sudden, great famine came across that country and became hungry, began to starve. So he sold himself to some of the countrymen there, and he worked in the fields feeding the pigs. He was so hungry and no one cared for him. He began to desire the slop that was being fed to the pigs. And then finally he comes to himself. He says, "In my father's house there are many servants, and none of those servants are hungry or without food. Perhaps I will say to my father, I have sinned against you, I have sinned against heaven and earth, no longer worthy to be called your son, but if you just allow me to be one of your hired hands, surely I could have enough to eat from the scraps on my father's servants' table." So he returns back to his father's house. Meanwhile, while he was still a great distance out, the father leaves, and he comes to the son. And the son sees the father. And he says to the father, "Father, I've sinned against you. I've sinned against heaven and earth. I'm no longer worthy to be your son." And immediately the father says to his servants, "Kill the fattened calf, grab the finest robe, grab a signet ring, and let's dress my son. For he was dead, and yet today is now alive." Now there's a great party and singing and dancing and rejoicing going on. And the elder brother heard what was happening. So he says to one of the servants, "What's going on? What's all the commotion? Why is there this great party?" The servant says to the brother, Your brother has returned, and your dad has ordered the fattened calf be killed in his honor. For he was lost, and now is found." So the son becomes angry and upset. Then he goes charging off to the father and saying, "How is it you have this party for a son who has squandered everything you've had, given it away to prostitutes and drunkards and all sorts of heathens? And you have a party for him? I've been with you all this time working in your fields, and yet you have never thrown a party for me. You've never killed the fattened calf for me." And the father says to the son, "Son, Everything I have is yours. And it's always been yours. And you've always been with me. But this brother of yours was dead, but today is alive. He was lost, but today has been found. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who owns this vineyard. And he comes out at the 3 o'clock hour and sees a bunch of people just sitting there, doing nothing. Says to them, "Why aren't you working?" And the people say, "Well, no one has hired us." Says, "Come, work in my vineyard, and I will give you a just wage for a day's pay. At the 6th hour, he comes and again sees people just standing around, doing nothing. He says, "Why aren't you working?" "No one has hired us. Come and work in my vineyard, and I will give you a just day's pay." Again at the 9th hour, and then at the 11th hour, he comes out again and again. He's just standing around. He says, "Come, work in my vineyard, and I will give you a just day's pay." Now later, when it was time to pay, and the day had come to an end, he begins paying each one of the servants exactly what he said. I will give you 1 day's pay to each of them. Yet those who were hired in the morning said, "How is it you give us the same pay as you gave to them who were hired at the 11th hour? We bore the heat of the day. We worked. We sweated. We burned up all of our energy." And yet these people whom you've hired at the last hour get the same wage as us, as they were expecting more. And the owner of the vineyard says, "Are you mad? Are you jealous? Are you envious that I am generous? You agreed to the pay. You're okay with the pay. And I was willing to pay you that pay. Why do you grumble against me? Because I'm generous with my money." So in the book of Leviticus it says, in the very last chapter, that God gives valuation to all the people, whether males or females or children. He says there's a value to them, and even demonstrates what their value is, saying that everything devoted to God has value. Even the things that are devoted to destruction have value. And in fact, those things are what are concentrated as holy. Everything in the book of Leviticus we find is that all the first fruits, whether it be the first fruits of our grain, the first fruits of our animals, the first fruits of our money, the first fruits of our day, everything that's first fruits is devoted to God. And everything devoted to God is holy. Holy. For this reason, Jesus is the firstborn of the dead. And we see it right there in the book of Leviticus. That if anybody wants to ransom their own life, all they got to do is pay a fifth more than what the value of that life is. You can devote it to God, and then you can buy it back from God. Yet God says if it's devoted to destruction, it cannot be purchased back. It cannot be redeemed. It cannot be ransomed. And yet, it's for that reason Jesus came into the world to be destroyed. As he came to pay the ransom for many. Came to pay the price for the things that could not be redeemed, could not be ransomed, things devoted to destruction, in order to concentrate them and make them holy. You can't be ransomed out of God's hand. You can't be rescued out of the hand of God. This is the good news of the kingdom of Jesus Christ. The dead shall rise, and they will rise first. And then the living will meet the dead in the air at the last trump, at the final call. See, Jesus says to the unbeliever, those who don't believe walk underneath the punishment of God because they don't believe. Believe what? He's your dad. He's your father. And he's always been with you. And everything he has is yours. But those who were deemed dead, without hope, are now alive. And so let us rejoice in that.
O daughters of Zion, O Abraham's sons, hear the words of your father, hear his promise of love. I will make you a blessing, so count the stars if you can. You will be a great nation. I will give you this land. I will bring you back home. I'll bring you back home, oh my children. You will no longer roam, lost and alone in the night. There is nothing on earth that could take you away. Once I gather you under my wings, I will bring you all back home again. Though you've wandered like strangers to the ends of the earth, I will send you a Savior. I will finish my work. You have no other shepherd. You have no other Lord. Green pastures are waiting. But don't fear, oh my daughters, or sons of Abraham.